In the colonial center of a city that you may not have heard about, there exists a very interesting dance event that celebrates the city's anniversary as well as the various native backgrounds. This show is massive and full of color and energy. The amount of detail and effort that went into the costumes of the many different dancers is astounding. If you are a lover of the arts and different cultures and enjoy checking out new places and events, this is the episode for you. So join me as we check out this very interesting dance event in the picturesque center of Saltillo, Coahuila. This journey begins in Monterrey's main and massive bus station for this roughly 1.5 hour to 2 hour journey to Saltillo. About half of this journey will be just getting out of the traffic in Monterrey. From the moment we leave the station, we notice the ever-present and iconic Cerro de la Silla, as well as the many buildings in the massive but scattered skyline of Monterrey, which, if we're all combined in one area, would be bigger than most downtowns. So needless to say, as we drive through the city, there seems to be a never-ending ocean of either newly constructed towers or towers under construction at the moment. This construction boom is mainly a result of the fact that Monterrey, Mexico now is one of the main industrial hubs of the Americas, resulting in the city being one of the biggest boomtowns on the continent. Many of these new towers enjoy stunning views of the magnificent Sierra Madre mountains. But of course, just like in any city, there are those that don't seem to receive their fair share of the wealth and have to be creative to make ends meet. At this point, we reach a very desperately needed recent expansion of the freeway system that basically connects the tollway leaving to Mexico City with the main east and west freeway of Monterrey. Seeing the many familiar American franchises gives me a feeling of being at home, especially when I see the very iconic and popular grocery store chain from Texas. As we get close to the end of the metro area, we approach La Huasteca, which is one of the most popular natural parks in the area with its massive and very jagged limestone peaks. We finally exit the immediate metropolitan area of Monterrey and enter the countryside. And as we do so, the local roads give way to the highways leading to Saltillo. Lucky for me, the bus company that I use decided to take the toll road, which is generally a lot smoother and a lot faster. As we climb a few thousand feet in elevation, we pass through the mountains, which tend to be quite windy at times, creating opportunities for wind energy. And the greener lowlands give way to the more arid highlands as we inch ever so closer to our destination. We finally arrive to Saltillo. At an elevation of about 5,000 feet, this city is the capital of the northern state of Coahuila, which is one of 6 states in Mexico that border the US. This city was founded in the late 1500s, making it over 400 years old, as well as one of the oldest colonial cities in the northern part of the country. The age of this city is not so obvious when driving through the miles and miles of brand new suburban growth that has resulted from this city's proximity to the industrial powerhouse of Monterrey. And even though Saltillo has roughly about 1 million people in its metropolitan area, it is essentially starting to act like a distant satellite city or even a suburb of the more massive Monterrey. Despite their proximity, these two cities have quite different climates, being that Saltillo is a few thousand feet higher and more arid.
Alright guys, we're about to arrive into Saltillo, which is almost like the suburb of Monterrey. Of roughly about 1 million people in the metro area, and it is growing pretty rapidly. One thing I do notice about this city, it tends to be fairly clean, of course, just like any city. It has its not so beautiful parts, but it's a fairly pleasant city. I'm not going to say it's one of the most beautiful cities in the country, but it does seem to be a city that might be a pleasant city to live in if you're looking for just a relaxed place close to Monterrey, but without the hustle and bustle and some of the negatives that come with a city that's booming and growing immensely like Monterrey. So this is basically acting almost like a suburb, as you can tell. A lot of suburban developments that you see back in the States, you see them here. The H-E-B, the Office Depot, Burger King, Home Depot.
As we get close to the Saltillo bus station, we are witness to an artist performing for stop traffic in return for tips, which is something that is quite common in Mexico.
So now we're entering the Saltillo bus station. It is a very small bus station compared to the other bigger ones like in Monterrey. Simple, but it does its job. You can see a Pollo Loco in the distance.
From the bus station, I take a taxi to the historical center of the city. It was this driver who informed me that Saltillo was hosting a very special dance event to celebrate its anniversary, so I actually discovered this event by accident.
That we're going to have an event of many dances passing through here, so I actually really look forward to that. Surprise almost every time I come to Mexico.
Knowing this, I decided to use a little bit of the extra time that I had before the show started to take footage of the historical buildings in the Colonial Center, which was my original intention before I even found out about the show. Upon arrival, one of the most notable buildings we see is Saltillo's famous and very elegant historic casino, which is supposedly being used as an event venue, followed by the city's main cathedral in front of the very beautiful main plaza.
And in front of us we have the main cathedral of the city, Catedral de Saltillo, or they also call it Catedral de Santiago.
In the main plaza, they were setting up for what seemed to be additional entertainment for this massive event.
Like I said earlier, I'm quite lucky to be here on a day when they're holding this special event. And from what I understand, it's actually for the anniversary of the city. Thus, we are about to witness many dances. It's going to be quite interesting for me because this is also my first time. From what I understand, a bear is kind of the symbol of the city because of the high mountains that you have nearby that apparently do have bears. Of course, just like any main plaza, or generally any main plaza that you find here in Mexico, you find all your vendors selling all sorts of stuff from food to toys. Mostly food generally, at least from what I've noticed. Sometimes some of the best food, actually. Look at that, you got the churros. Looks good. This is how they make the churros here in Mexico. Alright, you know me. I'm addicted to churros, especially here in Mexico. But I noticed the way they make it here is different than what I'm used to. They're a lot thinner. They do look crispy, but of course that's for me to find out. And even their color, they have like a much deeper orange tone. Got them for 50 pesos, so let's try them out. I put a little bit of chocolate and also sweet condensed milk, or it looks like sweet condensed cream.
It was now time to join the growing crowds at the entrance of the historical downtown as the dancers were starting to make their way towards us along Calle Miguel Hidalgo. And to my surprise, there happened to be a very beautiful coffee shop nestled in a colonial building right at this very location. So I decided to go inside and quickly order a matcha, but not so surprisingly, there was no one to take my order since they too wanted to watch the show. But I was able to get what I wanted, and as I was enjoying my matcha, I could hear the noises from the approaching dancers outside. After having a very satisfying matcha in this exquisite coffee shop, it was finally time to join the crowds to enjoy the show. This event consisted of many groups of dancers that seemed to represent the different ethnic groups as well as regions within the country. Each group had a banner showing what group they were representing. The number of dancing groups and the amount of detail put into the costumes is almost overwhelming, to be honest with you. And as a general rule, it seems that as the show goes on, the dances become more energetic and the costumes even more colorful. And here we have a representation of what seems to be the famous and legendary Apache tribe. Believe it or not, at this point the show was barely getting started as the Apache were one of the first groups, and we're about to see many other groups with their unique costumes, dances, and even comical and folkloric elements. Keep in mind that after these dancers pass in front of me, they head out to the nearby main cathedral, which is one of their last stops that they performed their dances. This next group, representing Tlaxcala in the south central region of Mexico near Puebla and Mexico City, is one of my favorites, and I think you will see why. This next group was massive, so it looked very interesting when they danced together, and they were quite energetic. Now keep in mind that this was just an express representation of the many different performances in this event, and we will check out 2 more performances here before moving on to the cathedral where these performers were headed to. When I finally decided to move to the cathedral to get a different perspective of this event, it was very hard to get a spot because of the big crowds, as you can see. Clearly, the cathedral was one of the most desirable locations to view this event, so much so that people were even climbing on the fence of the courtyard. But luckily, I was able to sneak into a location right next to the gateway of the courtyard to actually be able to view the dancers from up close as they approached the cathedral. And as these dancers pass by me, they enter the courtyard of the cathedral to perform one of their last dances in the event. But unfortunately, because of the large crowds and the people on the fence, it was hard to see their performance inside this courtyard. So, as an alternative, I decided to hang out where these dancers were exiting to get a better look at the very elaborate designs on their costumes, as well as some of the other dancers I hadn't seen yet. I was even witness to what seemed like folkloric comedy. There is so much more to see, but because of time limitations, I will only show you a few more groups that I found to be very interesting and colorful towards the tail end of this event. After seeing the last groups as they were exiting, many of whom seemed quite tired from the long and intensive performances, I decided to check out the main plaza, which at this moment was full of life and very crowded. So let's absorb the culture as we walk one last time through this beautiful colonial plaza. Believe it or not, there were still some dancers performing here, which to me shows a certain love for their own culture. For all I know, they could have been just rehearsing for another show, but it still looked quite beautiful to me. And as I was admiring the dances and the costumes from up close, I came across this very interesting quote on someone's back. It says, "I don't try to dance better than anybody else, I just try to dance better than myself." Much respect to those who do not let their authentic culture perish.